The curse of number 2. In the UFC, being second best is a curse. Champions get remembered forever, their names etched in gold. But the fighters who came close, who fought legends, pushed them to the edge and just couldn't cross the finish line. They live in the shadows of almost. Dan Henderson, the legend who never won UFC gold. Dan Henderson is one of the most decorated fighters in MMA history. An Olympic wrestler with knockout power in his right hand, nicknamed the H-Bomb, Henderson won titles in Pride and Strikeforce, beating some of the biggest names of his era. But in the UFC, gold always slipped away. Henderson first fought for the UFC light heavyweight belt in 2007 against Quentin Rampage Jackson. It was a close competitive fight, but Rampage edged him on the scorecards. Later that same year, Henderson dropped to middleweight to face Anderson Silva. He started strong with takedowns, but Silva adjusted, submitted him in round 2, and Henderson left empty-handed again. Years later, after his legendary knockout of Fedor Emelianenko outside the UFC, Henderson got one final shot at UFC gold in 2016. At 46 years old, he fought Michael Bisping in a rematch for the middleweight belt. Henderson nearly pulled it off, dropping Bisping twice with the H-Bomb, but the judges scored it for Bisping, denying Henderson the storybook ending. Henderson retired with belts in other organizations and a Hall of Fame legacy, but in the UFC, he'll forever be remembered as one of the greatest fighters to never capture gold. Joseph Benavidez, the curse of Mighty Mouse. If Dan Henderson was cursed by timing, Joseph Benavidez was doomed by one man, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. Benavidez was fast, technical, and explosive, with knockout power in a division built on speed. When the UFC created the flyweight division in 2012, many thought he'd be its first champion. Instead, he lost the inaugural title fight to Johnson by split decision. They rematched in 2013, and this time DJ left no doubt, knocking Benavidez out in the first round. Still, Joseph wouldn't go away. He strung together win streaks, beating names like Henry Cejudo and Alex Perez. Each time, fans thought his moment had finally come. But when Mighty Mouse eventually left the UFC, Benavidez ran into another wall. Davison Figueiredo. Benavidez fought Figgy twice for the vacant belt in 2020. Both times he was stopped. 4 title fights, 4 losses. Benavidez retired in 2021 with 28 wins and the respect of everyone who saw him fight. But for fans, his name will always come with an asterisk. One of the best flyweights ever, but forever stuck at number 2. Alexander Gustafsson, Jon Jones' shadow. In 2013, Alexander Gustafsson nearly shocked the world. At UFC 165, he faced Jon Jones, the most dominant light heavyweight in history. Nobody expected Gustafsson to win. But for 5 rounds, he pushed Jones to the brink. He outboxed him, bloodied him, and even took him down. Something nobody thought possible. When the final horn sounded, many believed Gustafsson had pulled off the upset, but the judges gave Jones the decision. It was close, but not enough. That fight made Gustafsson a star, but it also cursed him. His next title shot came against Daniel Cormier in 2015. Another brutal, razor-thin fight, another loss by split decision. In 2018, he rematched Jon Jones. This time, Jones finished him in the 3rd round. 3 title shots, 3 losses. Gustafsson is remembered as the man who came closest to dethroning Jon Jones. For fans, he'll always be the ultimate what if. If you're hooked on these stories of curse number 2s, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps us keep bringing you the wildest history and behind-the-scenes stories in UFC. Chad Mendes, the powerhouse who met Aldo and McGregor. Chad Mendes was a wrestler built like a tank with dynamite in his fists. He had the perfect mix of power and grit to be champion. But his timing couldn't have been worse. In 2012, he fought Jose Aldo for the featherweight belt. In the final seconds of round 1, Aldo landed a knee that knocked Mendes out cold. 3 years later, they fought again. This time Mendes fought brilliantly, hurting Aldo multiple times. But over 5 rounds, Aldo's experience carried him to another decision win. Then came UFC 189. Mendes stepped in on short notice to fight Conor McGregor for the interim belt. He dominated early with wrestling, grounding McGregor and bloodying him with elbows. But by round 2, Mendes gassed and McGregor knocked him out. 3 title fights, 3 losses. Mendes beat nearly every contender he faced, but against legends like Aldo and McGregor, he always came up just short. Kenny Florian, never the bride. Kenny Florian's nickname could have been always the contender. A true pioneer, Florian fought in multiple divisions: welterweight, lightweight, featherweight, and challenged for UFC gold 3 times. Each time, he fell short. His first title shot came in 2006 at UFC 64 against Sean Shirk for the vacant lightweight belt. Shirk's wrestling proved too much, and Florian lost a decision. In 2009, he got another chance, this time against BJ Penn. Penn's boxing and jiu-jitsu were levels above, and Florian was dominated. In 2011, Florian dropped to featherweight to challenge Jose Aldo. Once again, he came close, but Aldo's striking and takedown defense secured the win. Florian retired 0-3 in title fights. He was respected as a skilled cerebral fighter and later became a successful commentator. But as a fighter, he'll always be remembered for one thing: he was never the guy, just the guy standing across from him. Gray Maynard, the trilogy that broke him. Gray Maynard's rivalry with Frankie Edgar is one of the most heartbreaking sagas in UFC history. It started in 2008 when Maynard handed Edgar the first loss of his career. Using his size and wrestling, he controlled the fight and earned a unanimous decision. That win put Maynard on the map, and it planted the seed of a rivalry that would come to define both men's legacies. Fast forward to 2011, Edgar was now lightweight champion, and Maynard had earned his shot at the belt. At UFC 125, Maynard nearly ended it in the very first round, dropping Edgar multiple times and coming inches from a finish. But Edgar survived, clawed back into the fight, and after 5 brutal rounds, the judges scored it a draw. The UFC booked an immediate rematch later that year. Once again, Maynard nearly knocked Edgar out in the opening round. Once again, Edgar refused to go away. By round 4, Edgar had taken over, landing a clean combination that knocked Maynard out cold. So across their trilogy, Maynard beat Edgar once, had him on the brink twice, but left without the belt every single time. That rivalry broke him. After UFC 136, Maynard never fought for a title again, fading from contention. For fans, the trilogy is a cruel reminder. In MMA, you can be better for 20 minutes, but if you don't finish, history only remembers the champion. Alistair Overeem, the champion everywhere but UFC. Alistair Overeem is one of the most decorated heavyweights in combat sports history. A former K1 Grand Prix champion, Strikeforce champion, and Dream champion, the Demolition Man collected belts around the world. With devastating kickboxing and brutal knees from the clinch, he was feared wherever he fought. But in the UFC, the one belt that mattered most always escaped him. Overeem arrived in 2011 with sky-high expectations and immediately made noise by destroying Brock Lesnar with a vicious body kick. It seemed inevitable that UFC Gold was next, but Overeem's UFC run turned out to be inconsistent. Incredible highs, followed by crushing losses. In 2016, he finally earned his shot at Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight championship, and for a moment, it looked like destiny. In the first round, Overeem dropped Miocic with a clean left hand and nearly submitted him with a guillotine choke. But Miocic survived, turned the tide, and knocked Overeem out cold. That was his one and only UFC title shot. After that, Overeem remained a contender, picking up big wins over names like Junior Dos Santos and Mark Hunt. But every time he was close to another title opportunity, he stumbled. Overeem retired in 2021 with a legendary career across multiple organizations. But in the UFC, he'll always be remembered as the man who won everything, except the belt that mattered most. Yoel Romero, the soldier of God who fell short. Yoel Romero is one of the most terrifying athletes ever to step into the octagon. A Cuban Olympic silver medalist in wrestling, with freakish knockout power and athleticism even in his 40s, Romero looked destined for middleweight gold. But destiny had other plans. Romero challenged Robert Whittaker twice for the title. The first fight in 2017 was a war, 5 rounds of chaos. But Whittaker edged him on the scorecards. The rematch in 2018 was even closer, with Romero dropping Whittaker late. Many fans thought Yoel had done enough. The judges disagreed. Romero also fought for interim gold against Luke Rockhold in 2018. He knocked Rockhold out cold with a thunderous left hand. But because he had missed weight, he wasn't eligible to win the belt. In 2020, he fought Israel Adesanya for the middleweight title. Fans expected fireworks, but the fight turned into a strange tactical chess match. Adesanya won on points, and Romero's last chance was gone. Despite never winning UFC gold, Romero is remembered as a freak of nature. A man who could terrify champions, but somehow always fell short when the belt was on the line. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, the nicest almost champ ever. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is one of the most unique strikers the UFC has ever seen. A karate master with lightning kicks and a polite, humble personality. Wonderboy became a fan favorite, and twice he stood on the edge of UFC gold. In 2016, he challenged Tyron Woodley for the welterweight belt at UFC 205 in Madison Square Garden. The fight was a razor-thin war. Wonderboy's kicks and movement gave Woodley fits, but Woodley nearly finished him with a brutal guillotine. When it was over, the judges scored it a majority draw. The belt stayed with Woodley. They rematched in 2017. This time, both men were more cautious. Wonderboy had his moments, but Woodley's late knockdown sealed another close decision for the champ. That was Thompson's peak. He remained a top contender for years, beating names like Jorge Masvidal and Jeff Neal, but he never fought for gold again. Wonderboy is remembered as the nicest guy in MMA, a fan favorite technician, and the closest thing to a karate champion the UFC ever saw. But like so many on this list, he'll be remembered as Almost, the man who stood just behind the belt. Colby Covington, chaos at number 2. Colby Covington is one of the most polarizing fighters in UFC history. With endless cardio, relentless wrestling, and trash talk that made him a villain, Covington climbed his way to the top of the welterweight division. But when it came to championship fights, he couldn't get it done. In 2019, he fought Kamaru Usman for the belt. After a competitive war, Usman broke his jaw in round 5 and finished him. In the rematch 2 years later, Covington adjusted and fought smarter, but Usman still won by decision. Then in 2023, Covington got a third crack at gold against Leon Edwards. Once again, he fell short. 3 title shots, 0 belts. Colby may never wear UFC gold, but his name will always come up in debates. He's the modern example of the UFC's number 2 curse. From legends like Dan Henderson to modern stars like Colby Covington, UFC history is filled with fighters who could beat almost anyone, except the champion. They pushed legends to the brink, starred in some of the greatest fights ever, and became fan favorites. But their names will always carry that shadow. They were great, but they weren't the greatest. And that's the cruel beauty of MMA. In the UFC, there's no prize for second place. You either become immortal, or you become a story of what if. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Because in the UFC, the line between legend and runner-up is razor thin. And sometimes, being second best is the harshest curse of all.